We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Our topic today is energy uncertainties with Republicans, of course, about elections in the United States. This is Cleveland Jones, my great friend that's again with us. It's a pleasure, Professor Cleveland Jones.
Yeah, it's fun to be with you, and it should be nice.
Perfect. Uh, Professor, let me only say something for me is important. Let me remove your picture here. We all know that Republicans and Democrats have different views about renewables, fossil fuels, and several issues that's totally opposite from Republicans to comparing to Democrats. So, and today we would like to receive from you some comments and thoughts about these issues. Please go ahead. I will interrupt you sometimes. I can make
Yeah,
these things with hands and make
yeah.
some comments
But
during
you
your.
see, I perfectly agree. Very disparate points, and of course, maybe not so balanced because nowadays we have not only Trump, but we have Republican control of both houses, so that should ease some things. But I wanted to bring up something. Remember history. I like to mention this. Back when Ronald Reagan, a Republican, was president, at the end of his presidency, 98, 99, the U.S. was a major petroleum importer, 20% of needs or something like that.
Mhm.
Then in Bush, George Bush presidency at the end of 2005, the United States was importing 31% of its petroleum needs. Can you imagine that? 31% dependent on imports, of course, from Saudi Arabia and many, more friendly countries, but it was nonetheless dependency. Nowadays, of course, the U.S. is energy independent, not just energy secure, because energy security is important for any country, such as China and India. We discussed this before, and they need to diversify their sources, have sources of friendly countries, and so on. The United States is beyond that now. It's energy independent in the sense that it's producing more energy, 100
When,
quad
when you
BTU.
mention energy, you mention fossil fuels
All
or oil
sorts,
and gas,
oil and gas,
okay,
coal, bioenergy, and so on,
including electricity.
including renewables and so on. So this, the equivalent is something like 40 million barrels of oil a day. I mean, we're always talking 12, 13 of petroleum, of oil and gas. But, in terms of all energy, the U.S. is independent. And that is a trend that is the U.S. just crossed in 2023 the threshold. So it's becoming more uh, uh, independent in the sense that it has a surplus and it's likely to increase. So that is a very fundamental trend that doesn't have anything to do with Republicans or Democrats. It's business. The economy is
It's
going
the
in that
country
direction.
itself, it's not,
The
not
country is
parties.
going in that direction. So, in the sense that Democrats were not viewed as oil friendly and so on, this happened while Biden was president. There is no reason why this should not continue and even accelerate, given Trump's position on drill, Brady, drill, that kind of thing. But let me share a couple of screens
Uh-huh.
that I think make this point. Um,
Clear.
so share here. See, this is U.S. natural gas prices. Of course, they were higher, but in the last couple of years, they're low, very low. And U.S. Oil and gas producers are having to deal with prices that are so low that a couple of years back, no one would have produced because they were below production price. The U.S., especially the gas industry, the shale patch, and so on, has become so productive, reduced costs so much that even at basically under $3 per million BTU, they're competitive and they can produce gas and they produce as much as they can and export via LNG and consume it and so on. This is momentous because, some years ago we would have said, oh, gee, it's too bad, the industry is done for. No. And all we can imagine now is that, of course, Republicans will support natural gas
No
prices
doubts.
by freeing up consumption, more generating from gas plants and so on, as well as LNG exports. Now, this is the prices in Europe, because this is from trading economics, and they put the units in megawatt hours, the equivalent in million BTUs. Somewhere like $15, or maybe 13, 15, that kind. This is in relation to $3 in the U.S. So
Yeah.
you can imagine how much benefit the U.S. is receiving, especially its transformation
And
industries, the Gulf industries, and so on.
this is one of the reasons that Germany is going to almost bankrupt.
Exactly. I think we mentioned this a while back. This reshoring and so on that is going on because of very low gas prices in the U.S. is still going on. More and more petrochemical plants, but not just petrochemical plants, more oil and gas consumption
Yeah.
in heavy consumption industries, because Europe cannot afford that. You can't build an industrial base at 5 or 7 times the gas prices in the U.S.
Yeah. It's
And this
impossible
is,
to survive, to
yeah,
be
impossible
competitive.
to survive. So, Trump and the Republicans understand this, and they see this as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity because the U.S. has the potential to do
And
that.
probably Trump or Republicans will incentive this
Yeah,
situation for a long time.
exactly, because the industry is poised. This is what I'm trying to show. Now, if you look at production, yes, it's going up, and this is impressive, even with low prices. But this is going up with restrictions. It's not that the Biden administration gave them, free reign. This is the oil and gas, the natural gas production in the U.S. with restrictions. Not some were technical. For example, lack of pipeline takeaways. That is likely going to not be an issue, because if Trump and the Congress and so on says, no, we can't hold up these pipelines for 5 years with discussions, and they begin to build more pipelines, the takeaway restrictions, which were hampering the natural gas production in the U.S., will be done away with, and then you can expect this to increase significantly. We're talking, increase by several BCF per day and so on. This gas production in the U.S. is already equivalent to 50 times the production of Brazil, which is an important gas producer, pre-salt and all this.
We in
So
Brazil we are very modest in the gas
it's
production.
modest, but to put it in perspective, this is a tremendous volume of production, and it's repressed production, because as soon as the lid comes off, it's not going to come off immediately. There's obviously balances and so on, but there will be less restrictions, and this will lead to more production. There's already a trend for more consumption, which will support
And, and,
prices.
and the reserves, Professor, are enough to keep this production for a long
Oh,
time?
yes, yes. Well, I don't have those at my fingertips. I think we discussed that a while
Yeah.
back. For example, the Gulf of Mexico, the shale patch, dozens of billions of barrels of oil equivalent. So
But
this
this
is
gas specifically is coming from fracking in land operations, no?
exactly, maybe this yellow part is from other sources, but basically, shale patch and the oil production and the oil and gas production regions in the U.S. That production can increase. The reserves are there. The production capacity is there. What isn't there is basically the takeaway capacity, and that is gas pipelines. And if they can be built quicker and so on over within Trump's presidency, this can increase maybe
But
20% or more.
yeah, but my point is with Trump, Republicans, they can move this trend in a different way to increase or to decrease. What they
The
have?
reason is because I'm saying that the restriction is really not legislation and so on. It's environmental roadblocks to new gas lines, and those can be removed more easily than you can change legislation. I think we can talk in a while
You
about
you
legislation,
you
but
mean licenses and to operate?
licensing, yeah, and the roadblocks that have been put in front of the companies that are trying to build pipelines are
Okay,
enormous. So if those come down, more pipelines get built, and pipelines, even big and long pipelines can actually be built, in short order, a year's worth
yeah,
in a
but
big
they are
pipeline.
replacing pipelines by vessels, ship vessels with
No,
LNG
no,
sometimes.
that's for
Not internally,
export.
for export. Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but internally, if you have some of these shale basins, they're not right on the seaports. So
yeah.
they have to produce and then get their production to the
Okay,
export terminals of the LNG
okay,
units. That is the limitation. The LNG units themselves, the new LNG
okay.
facilities can also be built. One of the first things I assume Trump has
Okay.
said,
Yeah, LNG
the
is
pause
clear.
on
Yeah,
LNG will be
yeah,
taken away. So
yeah. It's
there's no
very clear.
problem.
Natural gas and oil is
Yeah,
very clear. Yeah,
no
you
problem.
go ahead.
But beyond that, we also have oil prices, and oil
Uh-huh.
prices have, despite war in Israel and Gaza, despite the continuing Ukraine war, despite China and the Taiwan Strait, despite all of these crises
Sanctions
going
for
on,
China, for Iran.
all of that going on, and oil prices are actually coming down. If we had spoken, well, I had foreseen that. And you remember, I said we will be in a band, and these crises will not drive us away from the band. And this is what's happening. We are in that band, from 60 to $90, and it's not very likely to get out of that unless something very momentous happens. If China all of a sudden starts growing at 6%, very
Yeah,
unlikely, maybe. And now with Trump in the White House, that is not so likely. So we are more likely to see stable, maybe even not decreasing from these levels, but these are very low levels. If they stay at these levels, the U.S. oil producers are fine with that.
yeah.
Uh, OPEC is not fine with that. There's many countries in
No,
OPEC whose
they are
break
sad.
even is much higher. So too bad for them. But the U.S. oil companies, especially now, are very happy with this. Um, and this is another portend of good oil exports
But
coming in the near
but in
future.
this case, the United States are increasing the power on the oil price and oil production, and OPEC is reducing the power and influence
Well,
this situation.
I would call it pressure. Sure, OPEC would like to pressure prices upward. They are powerless. They cannot do anything. Russia cannot do anything.
Yeah,
They have to produce what they can because they need the funds.
money, of
And
course.
if they were to reduce production, which would be very risky, even the United States might release SPR barrels and so on. It's
Yeah,
a dead end. No chance that OPEC or Russia can influence prices on the upside.
yeah. Oil is very clear. Do you have something about coal?
No, I'd like to mention that when we say, oh, Republicans are pro fossil fuels and so on, well, many Republicans are not pro coal. Well,
Oh, good
some
point.
from coal
Good point.
states, but many Republicans are not. Many Republicans are pro solar. Many Republicans are
But
environmentalists in the sense that
okay,
they
but
defend biodiversity.
less than Democrats, less
Oh
than
yes,
Democrats. Yeah.
less. But I'm
Okay.
saying it's not a homogenous block, and you say, "Oh, Republicans
No.
are all
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Trump."
Not
No, no,
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So we are likely to see. a big deal of discussion in terms of what the United States is going to do in terms of the Paris Accord. Just recently, Darren Woods of ExxonMobil asked President Trump not to leave the Paris Accord.
Wow,
Elon Musk
impressive.
is on record as saying that he thinks the U.S. should stay
Should
in the
keep,
Paris
yeah.
Accord. This is a very political hot potato, but in practice, there's no need to leave the Paris Accord. If Trump decides to do so because he has his own mind, that's fine. But important minds in his administration,
Yeah,
in
think
his
different.
base, have already come out and said, hey, we're all pro fossil fuels, but that doesn't mean you have to leave the Paris Accords. That is bad for business and so on. So this is a very important recognition. And if you look at U.S. oil production, the same thing is with that going up, and it's likely to go up even more. So the United States is preparing itself to be is on track to be a very influential oil player. The other players, well, Brazil is growing oil exports 1.5, maybe 2 million barrels soon. Guyana is there. Now we're seeing Suriname arrive. The United States has a tremendous influence. It's a very opportune
Yeah.
time for them
Let
to
me interrupt you because SRB is asking you, do you think the Ukraine could become major shale gas producer for the EU? I do not believe that, but
I do
your
not
opinion.
believe that any country can become a major shale gas producer. Not China, which has a
Yeah.
stated national policy to do so, and they will invest big dollars in that effort, but it's so uneconomical that they will not be very successful. Nor Argentina with Vaca Muerta. Um, so it's a very unipolar type situation. The United States is the dominant shale player. It will remain so. And
But
overall, both
but
oil
some
shale and shale oil, shale gas,
yeah,
and
but
conventional.
some other countries are becoming important in terms of gas production, like
Yes,
Qatar, Norway,
yeah,
but not the same level of United States,
yeah.
of course.
Qatar has plans to challenge the U.S. dominance in LNG exports. They have no chance. The United States stated goals will far surpass what Qatar can do. And this is in a scenario where many people say, oh, the world will be flooded with LNG. No, at those prices, at these low
Yeah.
natural gas prices, LNG will be competitive, and countries like China, even
Okay.
India, will become major LNG importers because at some level they will
Uh-huh.
say, yes, we will burn coal, but we will import a lot of LNG to promote our industrial growth.
Yeah, I would like to discuss a little bit about renewables. It's very important. You have something about renewables?
Um, I can tell you that I don't think renewables will lose a lot of strength in the US. The renewables that I'm talking about are solar, not wind. Wind, I think, may be a loser. But as you know, I have always said
Wow,
that
a loser.
wind will be a loser overall in the world. Not now, but in 5 years and 10 years, that will be a loser. So
Why?
the,
Let's do a podcast specifically for wind because it's
I
so
have a lot to
important.
say about
Your
wind.
your statement is something
Yeah,
fantastic.
it may surprise a lot of people, but I have basis for that. But so solar is not very likely to lose a lot of steam. Some of the incentivized production of biofuels and so on
Yeah,
may have a hard
but
time.
yeah, but my point is, Republicans and Trump will cut subsidies and support for renewables, or
But
will
but that's difficult. A lot of the corn belt is Republican. They are the ones who are producing corn ethanol. If Trump says, "Oh, we're not into corn ethanol or ethanol as a biofuel,"
yeah,
who loses? His
but so
base.
small quantity related to other energies. Ethanol is 10% or something like that of the
Exactly,
total.
but it's a big player in the commodities, and nowadays, it's also a big export commodity. So when you're exporting, those are critical dollars, given that the U.S. has $1 trillion deficit on trade
35
balance.
only.
Yeah,
35 trillions, not too much.
but this is also one of the things. Yes, everybody talks about Trump, signing, leaving the Paris Accords or something like that, or other orders. But there is a harsh reality which Trump and every political force in the United States or anywhere has to recognize,
Yeah,
that
but
there are harsh realities in the world, such as globalization.
yeah,
You
but
can't
this
get
this
around
accord,
that.
this agreement, the Paris Agreement, uh, is this still some effect in terms of world policies and strategies? Because
As we
this
saw, no.
okay,
As we saw,
yeah,
we're in the middle of, it takes a whole day to discuss what the agenda will be. And sure, maybe they're talking about more financing. Well, they promised financing last time. No financing came. So they can promise $1 trillion. So what? Promise 2 trillion. If you don't deliver, what's the promise worth? Nothing.
where subsidies are more important at this time, renewables or fossil fuels? Both receive subsidies, no?
The fossil subsidies are not likely to change much. They are very likely to go down gradually all over. This is a phenomenon that is not political. The subsidies for specific players in the energy transition, even for example, electric cars. Elon Musk is supposedly the right arm of Trump in energy and efficiency. He stands to gain. And ironically, if the electric vehicle marketplace is spared, tough measures, Tesla is likely the greatest and disproportionate winner in the game. And all
Mhm.
of the other electric vehicle players are not likely to gain as much. It's going to be, very uneven distribution of benefits. And that's a
And,
reality.
and Elon Musk is supporting Paris Agreement, Paris Accord.
He is supporting it in the sense, he's been on record saying, no, there's no need to leave it. He may change his mind if Trump is very dead set on that, but that won't change anything. What will change is electric vehicle policy and mandates and credits. And if they remain there for the benefit of Tesla, for example, it will not benefit a lot of the other automakers, including the conventional automakers, Ford and GM and all the others that have electric cars. They will not benefit as much. So it will be a very asymmetric concession of benefits. And I'm not saying that it's unethical. It's just the way it will work. Elon Musk, of course, has an interest in the
Okay,
electric
but
vehicles, but nowadays that's not his biggest bet anyway.
okay, there is a big, let's see, complication for Trump because one side he wanted to support Elon Musk, and Elon
Yeah.
Musk is a renewable guy, and at the other
Well,
side, no, it's wrong.
no, no, I don't think so. I think Elon Musk has an interest in his businesses. His
But
businesses are
his
electric
business is based
vehicles,
on renewables.
batteries, and the space program. And the space program nowadays is a bigger deal than some of these
Oh,
because if
okay, but the electrical vehicles that he manufacture every day is based on renewables, batteries.
batteries are one thing that may support renewables. In that
Oh,
sense,
okay, okay,
his
yeah.
large projects are battery based to support renewables. And he has been on record as saying, oh, solar energy is fantastic and so on. Of course, his battery packs will support solar energy projects. But
Mhm.
he's right in a sense. That is the way that these subsidies or these incentives can work. And if they go that way, they will incentivize solar projects. China is more than willing to export dirt cheap solar panels that you
Uh-huh.
can use as
Yeah,
fences if you don't want anything else. And Musk is more than willing to supply
yeah.
the battery packs.
Okay, but Republicans support nuclear much more
Okay,
than Democrats, I suppose.
right. I think nowadays the Republican Party, too late, decided or realized or woke up to the fact that nuclear is good. But that came too late. They are still classified as anti-nuclear. I don't think they are anymore to a great extent, but the perception is that. Whereas the Republican Party has been more consistently pro-nuclear, and it's obvious. We discussed this. It's obvious that nuclear is the way to go in the future. Maybe not fusion because that's got a lot of problems, but nuclear renaissance is here. It's happening. It is not controllable by the government. It will
Yeah.
happen because businesses are interested in nuclear energy. It makes sense from a cost standpoint, from base production standpoint, from logistics of the
Yeah,
major demanders.
but let me focus one question that to be very clear. Democrats are up in opposition to nuclear,
I
and
think that
Republicans are in favor of.
I think that has changed this last year. I think maybe more than 50% of Democrats are agree that
Oh yeah.
nuclear is good. And in fact, in many constituencies, there are nuclear plants that could be reopened. That means a lot of dollars, jobs, business. And so even Democrats realize that if a major data center is going to be settled somewhere and the nuclear facility can be reactivated, that is positive. And of course, they are safe. Of course, they are very cost competitive. Of course, they are long lasting. Of course, that the negatives are being debunked.
Going a little bit different for energy support and things like that, details. How do you see Ukraine and Israel influence of Republicans for the next months? Or I
I
mean,
think that they will not be very influential. You know, traditionally the Republicans are dead set on defending Israel. Of course, I think that will continue. That was the case with the Biden administration. Probably not going to change. Israel will have no holds barred support. Ukraine is the other is the loser in this story. It will probably be able to hang on for a negotiated peace agreement that is going to be on very favorable terms of Russia and not for them. And that's as far as they can go. Hey, that's life, you know. They hung on this long, and their basis of support is basically drying up. So they cannot do it on their own for very long. They will have to accept a mediated support, mediated peace that Trump or whoever will take credit for.
so you see that risks for conflict risk
Yes,
increase may increase with Republicans
yes,
compared.
that will happen throughout the world. Except that I think we discussed this a while back. We said, oh, conflicts in the world. I believe they will happen more frequently and some more intense. But I
But
don't
what?
think, yeah, but
But
I
what?
don't think that will threaten existentially the
Yeah, but
U.S.
it's not the speech of Mr. Trump. He's saying exactly the opposite. He's saying that he will attenuate Ukraine problem, that will support Netanyahu to stop this
Yeah,
war.
well, let me say this. I am not going by what he says so much because we've seen that, the words don't match up so much. So what I'm saying is my views of what will happen in the world, because the policies that we see coming in, isolationists and so on, despite the fact that we're globalized, will increase the risk of conflicts and will increase, it's not a risk, it will increase the BRICS and the global south and the alternative energy worlds out there.
What
Certainly
does it
China and so on.
what does it mean for Brazil? Some influence in these decisions about
Yeah,
Republicans and Trump.
I think Brazil actually comes out a slight winner because energy, oil, gas, and so on are big in Brazil, growing. And if that is the trend, Brazil will continue to be a large and larger player in oil exports. Not in gas because it's still gas poor, but it will benefit in terms of oil. In terms of energy, alternative energies, uh, that doesn't depend so much on the U.S. It depends on China, which is exporting very cheap solar and wind materials. That is benefiting not just Brazil, it's benefiting Africa, Southeast Asia, those countries that are willing to import cheap renewable energy, especially with financing from China itself on the very favorable terms for China, of course. But China provides upfront capital, it charges interest, and it goes after its interest payments. But it is providing a means for
Okay.
exporting its excess capacity in solar and wind, and that will
I have,
accelerate. The
yeah,
U.S. has said, "Hey, not us, not here." Well, China will be more than happy to take up the slack.
I have four conclusions to your
Good.
approval. First, fossil fuels probably will increase the support
Yes.
for.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
They were on the
Renewables,
an increasing trend
okay,
already.
yeah.
Yes, they will
Renewables
accelerate.
probably will be stable.
It will be
There is a
stable.
compensation internally.
Even Trump, even the
Trump with Trump
dominance in both
with Republicans, yeah.
houses
No.
will not change that.
Wars probably will increase the risk for wars. For your
I would
vision,
say crisis. Maybe if we have a war, yeah, that's serious business. I say crisis because the war in
okay,
Gaza and so on very
yeah,
restricted.
yeah,
Taiwan crisis might, if it becomes a war,
yeah,
it's something else. But it might be a crisis last six
okay.
months. Yeah,
And
that can happen.
finally,
It will.
prices probably for fossil fuels can reduce a little bit,
Yeah.
become
That is
stable.
actually good news economically for the world. The world depends on oil and gas to run its economies. That can actually be an unintended consequence of this isolationist type approach.
And my final conclusion: congratulations to the Republicans, and we we hope that in these 4 years that they can make a stable program for energy. And
That's what everybody wishes, even his supporters, Trump supporters, and the
yeah,
Republican
that's right.
voters.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Good. Let's talk another time about wind, and let's see if people have a
No,
lot of
let's have a
comments on.
commitment for the next Tuesday to discuss these topics of wind.
Okay, I'm prepared to defend some of my predictions here, and we'll see how many
Very
people
curious, very curious.
disagree.
Have a good
Great.
day. Bye bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.